All right, it's kind of a mix. Looks like about 57% have received PPP funds and plan to calculate and organize the forgiveness. And then about 43% are using our firm to help them calculate and organize their forgiveness documents. And then 71% of you plan to hold on to any money that's not forgiven and then just pay the monthly payments, where 29% of you plan to pay back the unused portion in full. Good afternoon and welcome to our Business Owner Advisory webinar. This is our 6th webinar, and our goal each week is to provide up-to-date and timely info to help small business owners navigate and manage their business during these crazy times. And if you are new or weren't able to join us over the last 5 weeks, our discussions have covered topics centered around relief for small business owners. In the past few weeks, we've mentioned that our plan is to continue our discussions into the future each week to be helpful to you guys as our valued small business clients. And as the PPP loan program has been the center of our discussions, we've recently developed a plan on finishing up our PPP discussions in the next month or so. Today, our focus of our discussion will be reviewing version 2 of our Canopy 360 PPP loan forgiveness calculator. We'll then go over the open items and topics that we're tracking and want to be able to cover so we can complete our PPP webinar series. And then we'll lay out our schedule for future webinars. I did want to point out as a heads up, about 20 minutes after the webinar today, you are going to receive an email with some important things. First, it'll be a survey. So I'd like to ask, could you please help us out and take just 2 minutes to complete the survey? We realize your time is valuable and that you're busy, but we'd also like to let you know that your feedback does help us help you. So we would appreciate if you would take the time to fill out the survey. Also in that email, there will be a link to our PPP loan forgiveness calculator. To be respectful of your time and allow time for questions at the end, I will stop promptly at 1:30 p.m. or when the presentation is complete, and we'll start getting into the questions. If you'd like to ask a question, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom, and my teammate Becca will be monitoring these during our chat today. And if for any reason we're unable to get to all your questions or there's a question we need to look into, don't worry, we will follow up with you in the coming days to ensure that all questions are answered. My name's Russell Lindsay, and I'm a CPA and one of the partners here at Canopy 360. And we have a team of 28 of us, and we target to advise and help small business owners on advanced strategies in the areas of accounting, tax planning, consulting, and wealth management. All right, so let's get started. On PPP loan forgiveness, we dove into a detailed discussion of approved costs last week and covered not only the detail of what costs fall into each category, but also what documentation requirements we think will be necessary when it comes to apply for forgiveness with your bank. If you missed last week's webinar, I'd recommend you catch the replay on our website. That's canopy360.com, and click on the COVID-19 link and you'll be directed to the webinar from last week. So what is your business strategy for PPP forgiveness? We alluded to it in the polling question. Do you feel like you have a solid plan, or are you Do you feel like you're stuck in the mud and lost a little bit? We think a properly structured strategy for forgiveness will do a few things for small business owners and help you accomplish a few things. Some of those things being, one, it will help owners track spending of their PPP funds. Two, it will help in documenting those expenses and spending. Three, it will help for applying for forgiveness with their bank and making that process as seamless as possible. And four, it will help in getting forgiveness approval and valuable insight into cash flow sooner rather than later to help you highlight, what you might need to pay back before your first payment is due to the bank. And we did see in the polling question, a lot of you said that if you did have some that was not forgiven, that you would just hold on to it to help with business operations and then just pay the payment. So we do see that as a valued benefit. So ask yourself again, what is your business strategy for PPP forgiveness? If you don't have one, that's kind of our goal today, and our recommendation is that you get one quickly after you receive the funds. And it's our hope as we go through today that will lead you to, being able to make that decision of, what your strategy is. As I've mentioned in the past, I do think there will be many businesses that have some of their PPP loan to pay back. You might ask yourself, is this a bad thing? Not necessarily. I've seen a lot of clients getting anxious and worked up about it. And in my opinion, knowledge and forward-looking information are the key to unlocking the information a business owner needs to make informed decisions about their future. So that is why we're recommending you focus on a business strategy for your PPP loan forgiveness now, so you can start planning for the future. On that end, we're happy to announce we are releasing version 2 of our Canopy 360 PPP loan forgiveness calculator today to aid our small business owners in the community. So what are your options? I don't know if you've seen our Canopy 360 loan forgiveness calculator. We're going to show you how to use it, and we'll use version 2 in just a few seconds or a few minutes. So we're looking forward to showing you how to use it. Many of you have version 1 of our calculator, and you fall into the boat of maybe you have an in-house bookkeeper, accountant, or controller to help you with those calculations. So be sure to look for the email after today's webinar. It'll have the survey in there, and it'll also have a link. Should be about 20 minutes after, you'll get it about 20 minutes after our webinar today. So look out for that. There'll be a link to get version 2 of the calculator, and you should stop using version 1 and start using version 2 immediately. We've enhanced it a little bit and fixed a couple of bugs in it. So you definitely want to basically throw version 1 in the garbage and start using version 2. So maybe some of you fall into that first category of, calculating the forgiveness on your own. But what if you simply don't have time because you're too busy, or you just feel unsure and worried about getting the calculation incorrect, and you'd be more comfortable having us calculate and verify your forgiveness? That is okay too. We are offering a service to calculate the PPP loan forgiveness. So what do you get? Well, we will start with kind of going over the whole 8-week process, and we'll get you signed up for the service. Then we'll send you over a checklist of information that we need. And then once you get us that checklist, we are kind of doing the calculation every payroll period for you. And we'll work on the calculations and putting together the required documentation. After we do the first week payroll calculation, we'll get on the phone with you, give you an estimate of what your forgiveness will be, and then we can kind of talk through different scenarios and help you develop that plan and that strategy for your business. And we'll work that calculation through the remaining 8 weeks. And then at the end, we'll have a whole package ready to submit to your bank with everything that they need to process your forgiveness of your loan. So if you'd like to discuss this service and hire us to calculate your PPP loan forgiveness, send an email to John Golden or Tanner Emmons. Their emails are listed on the screen, and one of them will reach out to you to start the process. All right, so now I'd like to walk you through a tutorial of how to use the PPP calculator. So let me just bring that up on the screen real quick. All right, Becca, are we seeing the calculator on the screen?
Yes.
All right, great. So, all right, so let's work through the calculator together. So, so you'll want to note that you are only going to enter information into the yellow highlighted fields. So you'll notice down at the bottom that there are 4 tabs where you're going to enter information. So on the loan and forgiveness worksheet, you will basically enter in how much you received in your PPP loan. That will then do a quick calculation for you. So you'll notice there was nothing in these fields. When we enter into the yellow highlighted field, it automatically calculates for you. So this tells you what must be used for payroll, and then the second amount, which can be used for the non-payroll items. We do show you right here what those items are. We have been getting a question a lot lately where somebody's trying to enter a number into a non-highlighted box. Like let me just show you. If I try to enter in, if I hit any number on my keyboard, it automatically gives us this error message. The cell or chart you're trying to use is a protected sheet. To make a change, you must enter a password. So we're getting clients calling us saying, what's the password? Well, sorry, we're not giving you the password. I'm just kidding. But if you're getting that error message, that means you're trying to enter a number into a box that is not intended to be edited. So just pay attention to that note. You're only going to enter information into the yellow boxes. So now we're going to go over to the payroll period. So you'll notice that we have a section. So this is the biweekly payroll calculator, and we have one for weekly and we have one for bi-monthly. So that'll be when you click that link at the end of the webinar to request a copy, you'll let us know which version that you need us to send you. But you're going to basically enter in the first payroll period. So you can, I'm going to just, for ease purposes, enter this in, hypothetical stuff here. So let's say we have 6 employees. You'll notice these white boxes, if you try to enter anything in, whoops, maybe that's not, Did you see that, Becca? We might need to protect that. Let me see if that allows me to edit that box. So we probably need to protect that box. But when we send this out to you later today, you will see that these boxes are protected, that you can only enter into the yellow boxes. So you'll have employee A and B and C and D, E, whatever their names are. You'll enter in their wage. You'll notice here that it is capped at 100,000 per employee. So you'll notice it's when we put these two employees here that bi-weekly make over 100,000, it's automatically carrying over the maximum of their payroll that we can use for this payroll period. And then you're going to put in whatever cost that the firm pays for health insurance. You're going to put in whatever the company is paying in retirement match, and that will automatically calculate the payroll for that pay period for purposes of the calculation. You'll also put in however much you paid in state unemployment tax. And then the way we have this calculator set up, because if you're just now recently getting your loan, we've got this set up to where it will automatically populate the first pay period into every additional pay period. It will automatically assume that every pay period going forward is going to be the same. And the reason why we have it set up that way is so it can give you an estimate now. So you don't have to wait to enter in the payroll for every pay period and get to the end of the 8 weeks and then be like, surprise. So we've got it set up. This is only for estimate purposes. Of course, then when you get to your second payroll period, you'll come in, you'll enter the new numbers in for each employee for that pay period. And then the new numbers for health insurance. And then it'll take your original actual pay period from period 1 plus your actual from period 2, and then it'll estimate period 3 and period 4 in the event of a biweekly based on that most recent. So it's going to always give you a pretty close estimate. And then each pay period, as you update the actual data, you will refine your estimate. You'll then also put in your rent for May and your rent for June. You'll put in the date that you paid those costs. You'll put in your utilities, your internet, and all your other costs. And then if you have any, maybe you've got a equipment loan that you're paying on, and you'll put the interest portion of that loan. So then so now this gives you an idea of what your other approved costs are. And then you're going to go through and you're going to do your FTE calculations. Making up these numbers, but you will pull these numbers from these actual payroll periods. It will then do a calculation of your FTEs. the way that this works is you've got 2 periods for your baseline head count. And then over here, you'll put in the date that you received your PPP funds. And then for the first payroll period that you have there, you'll put in what your hours were for that pay period. It will then forecast forward, assuming your hours will stay the same. Each pay period going forward, you can go in here and automatically put the correct information in here. And you will then have filled in every highlighted box. So you'll want to make sure you have all your expenses, all your payroll, and then you can come over to the first page and it will tell you in this scenario of your $75,000 PPP loan, it'll show you what your total forgivable payroll costs were, which there is a total column at the bottom here. So that shows you your total payroll and then what's allowed for payroll, health insurance, and retirement account. So that pulls that over here, pulls over the other costs, and it tells us that of our $75,000 loan, we are going to have to pay back $3,600. So that is an overview of our calculator. Let me get back to the presentation here. So like we've mentioned in the last few webinars, there are a few topics that we are still waiting for guidance on from the SBA. So these topics include, will the measurement period start date change? So right now, the 8-week measurement period starts on the date you get the funds and goes for 8 weeks. So the question is, will it change to help those businesses that have received their funds, but they're not able to resume full capacity of being open for business yet? So that's like restaurants and gyms and things like that. So that's something we're waiting on guidance for. We're also, for the FTE headcount reduction, will we use 40 hours or will we use 30 hours as the definition of an FT full-time equivalent? Because it's important to point out that the CARES Act doesn't specifically designate and tell us what number to use, but the Affordable Care Act for health insurance uses 30 hours as the qualification or the definition of an FTE. So we're curious, will we use that? Will they tie it together and use that 30 hours, or will it be 40 hours? So right now there's no guidance on how to determine the full-time equivalent. We'll also be looking at guidance on how the salary and wage reduction works. So this relates to whether or not you will have to reduce the amount of your costs that are eligible for forgiveness. And this comes up in the event where you have a reduction in employees' current salaries compared to their pre-COVID-19, pre-PPP loan salaries. And it even goes back into 2019. So we're waiting on guidance for that. do expenses owed prior to the PPP loan, but paid during the measurement period count? So what does this mean? So let's say you got your PPP loan on May 1st, but let's say you didn't pay, you weren't able to pay March or April rent. And then once you got the PPP loan, you had cash flow to pay it. Well, can we count those expenses because they were paid in the measurement period? We are looking for guidance on that. So we will keep our eye on that. And then what if you don't get 100% forgiveness? Is it all that bad? I've heard the saying, pigs get to eat and hogs get slaughtered. Well, I don't know where I was reading, but the other day I saw a note that a good strategy might be to pay a little back. It was saying something like, maybe they won't audit you if you pay a little back. I don't think there's any merit to that. But if the goal of being in business, if you think about it, as business owners, our goal is to stay in business and take care of our customers and provide a good place to work for our employees. And so if we were able to get that loan and use it for the approved costs and we have to pay some back, I don't think it's all half bad. As far as our future webinar schedule, we've been going strong now for 6 weeks in a row. And it is our hope that these webinars have been helpful. Our plan is to continue the webinar out into the future until we have a full library of webinars from start to finish on how the PPP loan program works. So I want to reassure you, we'll remain vigilant with these webinars until we've covered all of the program and all of those things that we're still waiting on guidance for. We'll continue to update the calculator, so there may be a version 3 coming out. We will keep you posted on that also. But we also want to avoid watering down the webinars where they lose their appeal and attendees fall off, because it does take a lot of time to prepare and get ready for these. So we want to make sure that we're just staying relevant and that there's still an appeal. So what do I mean? The SBA's most recent update on guidance was May 6th, which means there is no new information since last week's webinar as it relates to guidance. So also, we've got Memorial Day coming up. So here's what our schedule looks like in the future. So next week, we'll cover business owner advisory webinar on PPP updates and hopefully with some new guidance. Then on May 27th, we'll take a break for Memorial Day and we will not have a webinar that day. If any of you did pre-register for that, you will be receiving a cancellation on that. Then we'll be back on June 3rd. We'll discuss hopefully more on PPP updates and guidance. And then on June 10th, we'll take another break with no webinar that day. And hopefully we'll bring it home on June 17th. Our goal is to being able to wrap up the PPP webinar series on this day with all the guidance you need on how the program works and calculating forgiveness. All right, so that wraps up our discussion for today. So let's get into the question and answers. I want to encourage you to ask questions. This is typically a very fruitful discussion, so I'm looking forward to it. I want to encourage you to ask questions. You can use your Q&A button at the bottom. And so I will kick it off. We talked about it last week, and I got a text from a local banker probably 15 minutes before we were set to start this webinar. And there's been some news out there about if you got the PPP loan and if you had other sources of liquidity, is there a chance that you took the loan and you shouldn't have taken the loan and you need to pay back the loan and not use any of it? So that's something that was out there. And we did say last week that businesses that are received a loan of over $2 million, all loans over $2 million are going to be audited. And then the question was, will some of the loans under 2 million be audited? And there is still a chance that they'll be audited, but the good news is that the guidance released probably 10 minutes ago from a bank said, FYI, just released guidance on PPPP, says any loan less than 2 million is deemed certified in compliance with the quote unquote necessary certification. So that should alleviate fear among small business owners. So what that means in plain English is if you got a PPP loan, it was under $2 million, they're automatically saying it was necessary for you. So you don't have to prove that it was necessary for you, which means then your only burden of proof is on the expenses that you've spent for forgiveness. So that's really good news. So let's get into the questions. Okay, so I have a question in the chat from Chelsea. How is the PPP separated or separates from the EIDL loan forgiveness? So it is my understanding on the EIDL that if you receive the EIDL, the first 10,000, it was essentially like a grant. So it is my understanding that there's no proof required on the EIDL, whereas with the PPP loan, you are required to track the usage of those funds for the 8 weeks after you receive it, and then go to the bank, and the bank analyzes all your spending and your documentation, and then they approve forgiveness. So I think the differentiation is PPP, you have to prove the spending and get the bank to approve your forgiveness, whereas with the EIDL, it is a grant, is my understanding. All right. Okay, so there is a question, did we find out if sales tax should be included for rent amounts? We don't have anything that says don't include it. I think in the state of Florida, when you have a commercial lease and you're paying rent, I think it's automatically required to pay sales tax. So in my opinion, I think we include sales tax, but we do not have anything that specifically tells us not to include it. Any word on being able to count workers' comp as a payroll expense? At this point, we don't have anything that tells us that we can count workers' comp. So workers' comp is insurance. Technically, it's insurance, but it's like a tax. We are able to include employer paid health insurance, and I have it right here. It says payment for the provision of employee benefits consisting of group health care coverage, including insurance premiums. That's all we have right now. So it doesn't tell us, and the types of insurance premiums include this and that and the other. So at this point, I don't have anything that says we're able to include it. What I think is the best plan at this point is to move forward, assuming that it's not going to be included. And then if we get word down the road that it is able to be included, then that's kind of a bonus. Okay, so on the calculator, if we receive the PPP loan on a Monday, but our payroll runs on Fridays, which date should we enter on step 4 of the calculator so it will upload the correct payroll dates for the next 8 weeks? Yeah, good question. So you should enter the date that you received the PPP funds into your bank account. So when you look on your bank statement or you log into online banking and it shows the date that the money deposited to your account, that's the date you should use. It's then going to calculate out the 8 weeks. It's not going to get all the dates correct to correspond with your payroll because it's going to calculate the 8 weeks based on the deposit of the PPP funds. And then right now, this calculator is an estimator because they haven't said use the paycheck this Friday and use all the payroll for that paycheck, even if that paycheck covers some payroll for last week. Or if it says you got the money on Monday and your payroll hits on Friday and 5 of those days are within the 8-week period, but the other last week isn't included, we don't have guidance on what that is. So we're saying just enter in Friday's payroll, no matter what it includes, and it'll give you an estimate. And then we plan to edit the version and release a new version of the calculator as soon as we get that detail to calculate whether they say use actual payroll days that fall in the 8-week period, or whether they say use paycheck dates. So at this point in time, you want to enter the date that the PPP loan was deposited to your account. And then you would, in your example, loan received May 11th, you would use that date. You would then enter the total gross payroll for every employee that hits on May 15th, and then it would automatically give you an estimate going forward. And it's going to be pretty close to actual. And then once we get further guidance, we'll update the calculator for you. All right, looks like that's all the questions at this point. So if you're waiting to ask a question, please ask it. Otherwise, you're welcome, Cheryl. Otherwise, we will be wrapping up here in a minute. Okay, looks like that's all the questions. We hope you found today helpful. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget that we do need your help. In about 20 minutes, you'll be getting an email, and there's going to be a link to the calculator, and there will also be a survey. We would really appreciate your input, and we value it. So if you would take the time, just a couple of minutes, to answer our survey, we would really appreciate it. Let's see, there's one more thing in the chat. Great, you're welcome, Chelsea. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a nice day, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next week. If you aren't already registered, please be sure to register because it is limited to the first 100 attendees. And we appreciate your time today and hope you found this helpful. And we look forward to getting your input on the survey. Thank you. Have a nice day.